In the heart of a quiet African town nestled between sun-baked hills and red clay roads, there lived a woman named Amara, a radiant spirit known for her warm laughter, kindness, and unmatched culinary skills that brought the entire neighborhood together, especially during festive seasons. Raised by a widowed mother who taught her to believe in strength, humility, and grace, Amara grew into a beautiful woman whose hands turned cassava into delicacies and whose voice calmed the most restless of hearts. When she met Ifani, a charming, well-spoken man from the city, her world tilted on its axis. He was everything she had dreamed of: ambitious, magnetic, and seemingly in love with every part of her humble existence. What Amara didn't know was that Ifani, though polished on the outside, was driven by greed masked as ambition, and he saw in Amara not just a wife but an opportunity. Someone to cook for him, care for him, and perhaps help him climb the social ladder through her good name and community influence. Despite her mother's subtle warnings, Amara gave her heart wholly, marrying Ifani under the orange blossoms at sunset, promising him love and loyalty. In the first few years, life was blissful. Amara opened a small local restaurant with the savings her late grandfather had left her, while Ifani tried his hand at different businesses, none of which flourished because he lacked consistency and discipline. Amara didn't mind, believing that as long as she could support them and he remained loving, they'd survive anything. Unknown to him, before her grandfather died, he'd placed a $100 million inheritance in a foreign trust for Amara, with strict conditions that she wouldn't be told until her 35th birthday. To Amara, wealth wasn't something she chased. She was content with her small restaurant, her marriage, and the dream of someday having children. But then tragedy struck. One rainy night while returning from a food delivery, her motorbike skidded on an oil-slicked road, sending her crashing into a ditch. The accident damaged her spine, and though she survived, she lost the ability to walk. Her vibrant world faded into endless hospital visits, physical therapy sessions, and whispered pity from neighbors. The woman who once danced around open fires stirring pots of jollof rice and egusi soup could now barely lift a spoon to her mouth. Ifani's patience began to shrink. At first, he helped her get into her wheelchair, cooked her simple meals, which she barely ate, and told her stories to make her smile. But as weeks turned into months, his resentment grew. He missed the food, the clean house, the attention she lavished on him. He hated seeing her weak, hated pushing her wheelchair in public, hated the pitying looks people gave him as though he was the victim. Gradually, the love he once proclaimed loudly disappeared. He began staying out late, ignoring her calls, and snapping at her whenever she asked for help. Amara, once surrounded by love and laughter, was now confined to a bed, isolated in silence. Her friends stopped visiting, her restaurant closed, and her heart began to crack under the weight of loneliness. One afternoon, as she struggled to pour water from a jug, Ifani stood in the doorway watching her with a mix of disgust and indifference. "I can't do this anymore," he said coldly. "I didn't marry a burden." She looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying I want a divorce. I'm still young. I deserve better. You can't feed me, can't clean the house, can't even be a woman to me anymore. What exactly am I staying for?" His words were knives, slicing through the fabric of everything they had shared. Amara begged, cried, reminded him of their vows, but his mind was made up. Within days, he packed his things and left. Neighbors whispered, some cursed him under their breath, but he didn't care. Amara, abandoned and crippled, was left with nothing. No business, no husband, no future. She wept for days, clutching her pillow and praying for strength. But what Ifani didn't know, what no one knew, was that Amara's 35th birthday was approaching, and with it, a truth that would change everything. The morning of Amara's 35th birthday arrived quietly, with no balloons, no cakes, no songs, only the distant clatter of market women preparing for another day of trade and the sound of the wind rustling the curtains in her modest home. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a hollow stillness in her chest. Her body still ached, her legs still refused to move, and her heart bore the heavy silence of abandonment. Since Ifani left, she had learned to do the little things herself. dragging her weakened body across the floor, pulling herself up with ropes tied to the window bars, even cooking again with trembling hands. Pain was now her constant companion, but so was quiet resilience. That afternoon, just after the sun had climbed to its zenith, a sleek black car rolled into the compound, a car no one in that dusty village had ever seen before. From it stepped a tall, well-dressed woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile. "Are you Amara?" she asked gently, standing at the door. Amara, startled, nodded slowly. The woman introduced herself as Mrs. Chizumo-keke, a legal trustee from an international firm in Lagos, and what she said next made Amara's head spin. "You are now the sole heir to your late grandfather's $100 million inheritance. Today, on your 35th birthday, the trust fund has matured. Everything is yours." For a long moment, Amara said nothing. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. A fire burned behind her ribs, a whirlwind of disbelief, shock, and emotion she couldn't name. She thought of her broken body, of Ifani's cruel words, of the nights she'd cried herself to sleep with no one by her side. And now, the universe had handed her the means to rewrite her entire life. "How?" she whispered finally. The woman explained it all. How her grandfather had made the money through oil contracts in his youth. How he had hidden the fortune to protect her from opportunists. How she had always been meant for more than kitchens and roadside food stalls. But the inheritance came with a clause. She had to decide what she wanted to do with the wealth within 30 days. Keep it privately, start something meaningful, or donate it away. As the days passed, Amara worked in silence. She hired a team of discreet doctors from South Africa, moved to a private rehabilitation center in Abuja, and began an aggressive but delicate therapy program that promised her a chance to walk again. The pain was unbearable, but she pressed on, eyes burning with vengeance, not of hate, but of purpose. With money came freedom, and with freedom came clarity. While the world believed she was still weak and broken, she was building a new self from the ashes. 3 months later, Ifani's world began to fall apart. The new woman he had rushed into a relationship with stole his money and fled. The bar he opened with borrowed funds was shut down by the council for unpaid rent. Worst of all, he heard whispers that the same Amara he had mocked and abandoned was now a silent powerhouse, a mystery investor who was buying up properties, sponsoring rural clinics, and launching one of the largest food brands in West Africa named Amara's Grace, complete with a foundation for disabled women and widows. Shocked, he laughed it off at first, until one day he saw a massive billboard in Lagos. Amara Nwokedi, From Ashes to Empire. A story of grace, power, and purpose. Her face glowed from the center of the city. His mouth went dry. Guilt stabbed through him, followed by shame, then something more dangerous, desperation. He returned to the village pretending to visit his mother, but secretly planned to make things right. He knocked on her compound gate like a beggar, dressed in worn shoes and an old shirt. The security guard barely looked at him before turning him away. "Madam, no day see visitors without appointment," he said flatly. But Ifani begged. He cried. He knelt. After 3 days, Amara agreed to meet him, not out of longing but out of closure. When he entered the expansive living room, decorated with art, soft lighting, and the smell of fresh lilies, his jaw dropped. Amara sat tall in a golden wheelchair, regal and composed, dressed in an emerald gown that shimmered under the chandelier. She looked powerful. Oh! He fell to his knees. "I was foolish," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "Please forgive me. I didn't know what I had." She looked at him with eyes that had seen pain, betrayal, and rebirth. "You left me when I had nothing," she said quietly. "Not because I hurt you, not because I wronged you, but because I became inconvenient. You saw my inability to serve you as a weakness. You saw my broken body and forgot the soul within. I was stupid," he pleaded. "Let me make it up to you. I still love you." "Love," she echoed, her voice calm but firm. "You loved the version of me that served you, not the woman I am today. And this woman is no longer yours to hurt." With that, she pressed a button. Security escorted him out with quiet efficiency. Outside, the sun blazed, but Ifani felt cold. He stood in the street watching the Golden Gates close, knowing that he had lost far more than money. He had lost a queen. Meanwhile, Amara wheeled herself to the window, watching him disappear into the dust. She didn't smile, nor did she cry. Instead, she whispered a silent prayer for peace, and then turned back to her empire, ready to build more, give more, and live more. Her story, once buried under pity and pain, was now a beacon for every woman who had ever been tossed aside. And from that day forward, Amara was no longer the woman who was crippled and abandoned. She was the woman who rose, rich not just in wealth, but in wisdom and will.